Good afternoon. I'm Jeff Stein, and welcome to the first of our series on family finances. Today's session is going to be Pursuing Success for Every Generation. Now, having the opportunity to meet with a number of people on a daily basis, what I consistently hear is, I'm concerned that my children, that my grandchildren are not going to have the ability to be financially successful going forward for any number of reasons. Even the individuals I'm talking to still harbor concerns that they aren't going to be financially successful, even though they've demonstrated over the years the ability to do so. Today's session is going to be led by Anthony Gerby, who many of you know. Anthony has been our head of analytics for the last 6+ years and continues to do an outstanding job working with our clients by answering their questions and alleviating their fears. I want to make sure that I thank Lauren Blair for the outstanding job that she does in putting on these. And I'd also encourage you to give our newest member, Kimberly Hamlin, a call at your convenience. She's our new head of operations, and she is going to be taking Stein Financial Group and your experiences with us to an even higher height. With that, I'd like to turn this over to Anthony. And again, thank you all for participating with us today. And I look forward to seeing you at our future series. Anthony, please take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. I'm Anthony Gerby, and I am here today to lead you through our Family Finances series, and this will be part 1, and we're calling it Pursuing Success for Every Generation. And what that really is going to mean is that we are going to talk through stages of wealth management from preteen all the way up to post-retiree, and some strategies to help you talk about your wealth or your planning for success, and also some strategies for actually building that success. So first off, what I want to say is our group really does a lot with this topic, and that can be from the retirement stage all the way down to helping younger kids get started with investing. So this is really an important topic that we really feel strongly about. And what I want you to be aware of as we go through this presentation is if you have a question, the easiest way to share that question is through the chat feature in the bottom of this webinar. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube after the fact, the easiest way to get a question to us is to get at us via our contact information, whether that's a call or an email. So please do that if you have questions about any of the topics we're going to go over here. So with that, I'd like to start. And just before I start, there are a few disclosures. Feel free to pause and read these if you'd like. And now let's talk about today's agenda. So we're going to go through 3 major topics. Let's talk about wealth, and that would be how to talk about wealth with family members, with people who you care about and want to help build a financial future. Pursuing success for every generation. That's where we're going to go from very young to very seasoned, let's say, and how to build wealth, how to talk about wealth, and how to ensure that you're doing the right things at the right times. And finally, leveraging professional help. I mean, this is where we come in. We can help you figure out the steps that you need to take to get your financial future solidified. So, first topic today, let's talk about money. And there are a couple basic questions, and they're very basic. Why is talking about money important, and how does it contribute to a successful financial future? Well, here's a couple reasons why it's important, right? And I'm sure you know a lot of them already. Millennials earn 20% less than baby boomers did at the same stage of life. So when we're talking about growing wealth, the younger generations, it's incredibly important to have good strategies down, because there's this gap that's happening when we look at the studies here. And why did that happen? Well, it's a result of the financial crisis. It's a result of many of the different pressures that are on younger people that are different than what baby boomers faced when they were at the same stage of life. Another big reason, 70% of wealthy families lose their wealth by the second generation. And let me clarify that. What that means is that 70% of family wealth vanishes by the second generation. Now, it doesn't just poof out of existence, right? It gets spent. Perhaps it gets mismanaged. That's what we try to avoid. or maybe it just doesn't get used as efficiently as possible. So we're going to talk about some steps to help minimize that, help you both help those younger than you, or if you're in a millennial, if you are a millennial, how to save better, as well as if you're thinking about legacy, how to protect it, how to pass that money on, and maybe help some of your family members who may be millennials to do better. So those are the topics today. And what we really want to focus on is avoiding pitfalls. So this is at every stage of life, and this will go through baby boomers, Generation X, and millennials. And if you're curious about the dates on those, they're written right there. Baby boomers are beginning to retire in large numbers, and a lot of you watching this are probably baby boomers, and you may already be retired. But many of them aren't necessarily prepared for their long-term health needs. It's critical to prepare for future health expenses because that is going to become a larger and larger piece of the puzzle in retirement. I know that's not a shock to anyone. But a lot of baby boomers don't have enough money to save to last through their retirement, don't have enough money saved to last through their retirement, and they're maybe not prepared for those long-term health needs. So that's where we really want to focus on those two issues. Gen X, so those are primarily working adults right now. They're facing the stress of raising children, supporting their parents, and all the while preparing for that retirement. So that's a big challenge. And how to manage those and balance those is a really big key that a lot of people have a really tough time with. Finally, the millennials, and that we could also talk about Gen Z. They're not necessarily a part of this presentation yet, but they would be post 1996. A lot of millennials, if you know any, or if you have kids, grandkids, they maybe don't have emergency savings. They maybe aren't saving at all yet. In fact, maybe they're just trying to get the right job or find a career that they want to stick with. Maybe they're still paying off their student loans. A lot of that is putting pressure on a younger generation and not allowing them to save maybe at the level we would want them to ensure a happy retirement in the future. So maybe some obvious points there, but those are definitely some pitfalls we want to address today. So first off, we talked about talking about finances, and maybe this is a little basic for a lot of you. Maybe you already are comfortable talking with finances about finances, but for those of you who maybe aren't, or maybe there's other family members or friends who you need to have that conversation with, or you've been thinking about it, what do you need to do to lay the groundwork before you have that conversation? And take it from us, we do this every day. There's a few important steps to talk about. So, first off, saving. How do you feel about saving money? What is worth saving for? Another way to ask this question is, what do you want to use money for? And ask this not only of yourself, but of the person you're talking with or your family. Why is it important to save money? What are we saving for? Money is a tool. How can we use that tool to do things that we want to do? That's a big part of this. And that's, if you come into our office, that's one of the first things we'll ask you. What do you want out of life? We can help you get to that point, but what are you saving for? Second, spending. Obviously, what are your feelings about spending money? Are you, as soon as the money comes in, it goes out? Or are you, oh, I really feel bad about using my money. I'm really judicious with my saving. I'm very much a saver. We've seen people on both ends of that spectrum. And it's really important to get a sense of how you feel about that because that's going to determine a lot about how we help you prepare for your retirement. If you're a saver, we might have to coax you into spending a little more to say, hey, it's okay. If you're a spender, we might have to say, okay, let's be responsible about this. And that's true for family members or friends that you might be talking to as well. Debt. Are you comfortable going into debt to buy things? Again, one where we see a very wide range of answers. And I'll tell you right now, debt is neither good nor bad. It just depends on how you use it. So it's a delicate topic for sure, but it's a very important one to say, when am I okay with debt? And when am I not okay with that? Or what kinds of debt am I okay with or not? Credit card versus a mortgage, for example, two very different kinds of debt. And income. How has income influenced your life? I mean, that's a very basic one, but it's still so important. And we're going to cover those basics, but I do want to emphasize how important these issues are here. So as I move forward, we're starting at the low age. And here's a funny little quote. If you don't teach your kids about the ABCs of money, you'll end up with the D and E, debt and entitlement later on. And I think those of you who have raised kids or just have interacted with kids know that sometimes there's not a great conception of how money works and how finances work, and no fault of their own, they're kids. Maybe they haven't been let in on that conversation. That's what we're encouraging you to do. Not that you need to sit down and show them this PowerPoint necessarily, but talk about strategies for how to teach your kids responsibility when it comes to money, the value of saving. We're going to cover all those topics here in just a second, because involving your kids in family discussions is a really big key here. So, some of the things you can do: give your kids a budget when you go out to eat or go back to school shopping. When they're going down the list of all the different things they need, say, hey, here's how much we have to spend. That's just a simple idea. Let kids participate in family budget meetings. And maybe you're saying, well, I don't have family budget meetings. But give them a keyhole into the process of how you go about paying bills. That doesn't mean you have to sit them down and teach a graduate level course on the family finances, but just let them know, hey, some things cost money and we have to manage our money to help pay for that. Those are easy ways you can get kids involved in the discussion. Sit together as you pay bills. I just mentioned that. And finally, bring the kids to the bank or to us when you sit down with us, and let them meet us. And, we're fine with having as young as you want to go to meet the kids. And again, it's not like we're going to have a high level conversation. We're just going to try to impart the idea that this is an important topic. I think that's the main takeaway here. So, as the kids maybe get a little bit older, what we may want to start doing is talking to them about our successes. And in this case, what this slide is referring to are mistakes, right? If you have made a financial mistake, and it doesn't have to be a huge financial mistake, maybe you had a little bit too much credit card debt when you were younger. Maybe you got a mortgage at a higher rate than was really responsible. You bought a house, or, I'm just throwing out examples, but I want you to think about important memories and life experiences that you've had, and think about how you might talk to someone about that, to say, hey, I've made this mistake. Here, let me help you not make the mistake. Learn from my mistakes rather than having to make them for yourself. So I'd encourage you to take a moment and think about, okay, is there a financial mistake that I've made that I think could really help someone, or I could help someone avoid that in the future? And, how old were you? What happened? Why did it happen? What did you learn? You can't make anybody listen, but you can at least give them the tools to understand, hey, I've had a situation like this, and this is how it worked out, and I wish I would have done A, B, and C differently. That's an important thing with any topic of life, but especially with finances. So those ABCs of investing: teach kids about compound interest. Teach them about, hey, if you invest something, you will get growth that grows on your growth, right? That's what compounding is. It will continue to build up. One of the things that I usually recommend, and this is the second bullet point there, get them interested in following companies they can connect to. If we're looking at, and we do this quite regularly, we have clients or people we know who are saying, hey, I'd really love to get my kids interested in investing. How can I do that? Well, one of the things I like to recommend is that, what are they interested in? Maybe that's a pathway in. If they're really a technology person, and let's say they like Apple computers, well, maybe that's a way in to an investment strategy. Or maybe they're really outdoorsy and they like hunting and fishing, and we can look at some companies investing in that realm. So making it pertain to their interests, I think, is a big key in getting them invested in it, right? They're invested in the market or in stocks or what have you, but getting them invested in their investments is a big key. So finding where their interests might intersect with the world of investing is a big key. Open a savings or investment account to help children save for the future. Definitely recommend opening savings accounts for kids if you're so inclined, because it can help teach them about, hey, how does an account work? Might make them less scared to do it or to advance that knowledge when they get older, where it's like, oh, now I'm 20, 25, and I've never had an account and I'm just too scared to learn how to do it. Get them started earlier, because it's going to help them in the future. And if you like to, and this is something we do from time to time, is talking with younger people about market ups and downs and review your statements together. Everybody has a different relationship with how much you want your kids to know about your particular finances, especially when they're younger. But just giving them a window into that world, into what's important, and that's something we can help with, by the way. That's a big key in getting them prepared to take these steps once they're able to on their own. So I would definitely recommend getting them started with some type of an account, whether that's investment or not. So teach teenagers to manage money. And there's a lot of different aspects here, but one of the important things, and anybody who's a parent has had to cross this bridge at some point, an important issue to keep in mind is you need to let them deal with consequence of mistakes, with the consequences of their own mistakes. So there's a difference between letting somebody into this world and letting them sort of play around, but still deal with what's happening to their accounts in this case, if we're talking about investments, and bailing them out if something goes wrong. We want to try to balance that. And that's, of course, nobody has the right answer for how to do that. But maybe they overspend and don't have enough money for their left for their phone. That may be a valuable lesson for them to learn about budgeting, right? I mean, we can talk about some of these issues and how they might really help them get an understanding that's going to pay off later in life. Don't be afraid to hold them responsible. Don't make a huge deal out of it, but maybe let them fail a little bit, because one of the best ways to learn is to see how this plays in real life. And certainly, it's important to be as proactive as we can and to give them all the tools to succeed. But at some point, it's nice to learn through experience as well. So that's partially a recommendation I would talk about here. College students. So we've gone from younger kids, and you can see we're kind of building up in age here, sending college students out into the world. So one of the big things here is tell your kids about the price of college. Have that conversation with them, because not only does that give them a window into sort of the real world, right? But it also gives them a sense of, hey, this is going to be something that may follow you after you graduate. If you have student loans, you may be paying for some, if not all, of this expense. So let's make a choice that, yes, gets you to the place you need to be for your goals and your aspirations. And that's the number one thing. But the finance piece of it as well is really a big learning opportunity. And of course, bringing them through the financial aid process with the FAFSA, with student loans or grants or scholarships, that's a nice way to help people or help your kids understand more about money. But having them really sit down and analyze, okay, wow, I really like both these schools, but one is twice as expensive as the other. And that doesn't mean that's not the right one, but just let's have that conversation. I think that's really important. So frankly, discuss the value and cost of college options. Help your student develop a career plan for college. What are you going to do when you get out? Not everybody knows that when they go in, and that's okay. First off, you don't need to know where you're going to end up when you go into college, but let's make a plan. Let's say, okay, once you graduate, what theoretically are we going to look for a job right away? Is there going to be a gap year? Everybody's different, but let's just have that conversation. Work on a semester budget. So having the idea of, you have housing that costs money, you have food that's going to cost money, you have tuition that's going to cost money. How does that all fit with how much they themselves, the student, is helping to pay for that? How much you, the parents or grandparents, are paying for that, if you are at all, as well as any of the financial aid that works into the equation. And finally, work on a semester budget. Or excuse me, I just read that one. Discuss the pitfalls of credit cards and bank fees, and check in regularly. And I'll put those together, because sometimes if a child goes out into the world, or if a new college student moves out for the first time and they have this credit card, it's important to help them be disciplined. Hopefully we've laid the seeds for that in the past, where we've said, hey, this is how a credit card works. This is how it works if you rack up a bill on a credit card. If you don't pay it off in the first month, it charges you interest. Get that understanding solid, but also check in with them to make sure that, hey, how are you doing? Are you really going over budget or not? And that's a general way to talk about it. Each of your kids, grandkids, acquaintances are going to be different, but having that conversation is the important thing. So once they're out of college, and we'll call this the early years, let's set a good foundation. So one of the points on this slide here is sharpen those negotiation skills and ask for promotions. One of the big things for if you're in your 20s and 30s is obviously the number one thing, which will be on the slide second, is opening retirement accounts and contribute regularly. But a lot of people don't necessarily put two and two together, that what salary you earn is a big part of how much you're able to contribute to a retirement account. So obviously every job is different. They may get a wide range of different offers for salaries, but always keeping an eye towards, hey, make sure you're getting paid what you're worth, because not only on a fundamental level of, well, nobody wants to work for less than they're worth, but on a savings level, that's going to allow them to get ahead a little bit more. So it seems like an obvious point, right? Ask for as much money as you feel like is responsible, or you feel like you can, But don't forget about how that might affect saving as well. And the second piece here is figure out your financial goals. What are they wanting to save toward? Is it, hey, I want to buy a house, or hey, I want to pay off my student loans? Everyone thinks about retirement as the big goal, but there are a lot of financial milestones on the way there. Is grad school in the future? Do you plan to buy a house or replace your car? Are you going to have children? Do you want to take a sabbatical or a big trip? All that stuff needs to be planned for it to go as successfully as we know it can. And get and stay out of debt, right? If you have student loans, pay off your student loans and stay out of debt. You'll be a lot happier for it. The average American under 35 has between 23,000 and 30,000 of debt in the form of credit cards, student loans, auto loans, and so on. If you're carrying debt, let's make paying it down a priority. Not necessarily at the expense of starting to save for retirement, but it still needs to be priority number one to get that debt into a manageable or completely alleviated place. All right. After early years, now we've got working years, right? And we're continuing to build through the life cycle here. So first off, have a strategy for retirement and the so-called intermediate financial goals. Don't just wing it and hope for the best. This may be the time where it becomes really important, as the picture there sort of illustrates, to work with a professional. Um, it can be a very critical moment in those middle working years, maybe 30s and 40s, we'll call them, to get to the point where you're saving enough where you're on track for retirement. And how do you know if you're on track for retirement? Well, that's where a financial professional can come in. That's something that our office does every day. Make the most of your qualified retirement accounts and the remaining time you have. If you haven't increased your contributions to your workplace retirement plan since you started, now is a good time to do it, 30s and 40s for sure. You might have old 401ks from previous jobs you're not sure what to do with. If that's the case, first off, we can help with that and try to simplify and get you in a better place. But that's something to consider. Uh, Parents, you may be a parent at this point in your 30s and 40s. Parents are always worried about whether they're putting enough away for their child's college. However, remember that there is no financial aid for retirement like there is for college. And this is one of the things we talk about a lot. If you're in our office sitting across the table or on Zoom with us, you are our first priority. And we totally respect that you may want to set your kids up for the future. And obviously, as we've just talked about, that's incredibly important. And we value that a lot. But also saving for your retirement. We can't save for your kids' college at the expense of your retirement. There's got to be a way to balance those things. And again, there is no financial aid for retirement while there is for college. So that's a big key. And protect your health. Healthcare only gets more expensive as you age, and those small issues you've been putting off may end up being big problems down the road. So get those regular checkups. Make sure we're taking care of ourselves, because that's not only a life advice piece, but it's also financially important. And finally, as I mentioned right at the top, this may be the time, if you haven't already, to really start getting that professional help to get you on the right track. Uh, Finally, or excuse me, not finally, but next, we have working years where you're getting closer and closer to retirement. You can kind of see the finish line, right? And you might have heard about this mythical thing called retirement at that point. Maybe you have a countdown on your desk, or you have a calendar spot out way into the future with the number of days listed off. The first question that I would always ask is, how much money do you need to retire, or potentially retire early, right? How much money do you need to live on? And some people are perfectly happy to retire at age 40 and live on 25 grand a year for the rest of their life. Um, Maybe that's not you, but some people are perfectly happy. And if that is you, we can talk about how to make that work. I think more commonly, we're looking at someone who maybe wants a little bit smoother of a transition from that work salary to that retirement income level. Maybe, hey, if I could stay close to the same level I was making at work, that would be ideal. And okay, you may have to retire a little bit later to make that happen, but it doesn't mean it can't happen. And what is early retirement, if that's something you want to go for? What does that look like to you? How much does your desired lifestyle cost? And you may say, well, Anthony, I have no idea how much that lifestyle is going to cost. I maybe could cobble together a budget for my life right now, but how do I know what my retirement lifestyle is going to cost? And the answer is, well, we can help with that. We can help you approximate sort of how your expenses now will translate into the future. We have programs that we can use to help estimate that. And we can also just sit down and have a conversation and talk about your goals. Um, if you are looking to retire early, just know that it usually means there are certain trade offs. You're not working anymore and can spend your time any way you like. However, you might have to downsize or you might have to really manage your finances effectively. So, if that's something you're considering, now is definitely the time to start talking to us because especially if you're looking to retire in your 40s or even early 50s, it's really important to have a plan set out for the rest of your life because you'll have a long period of time to cover with just your investments and maybe eventually your social security. So it's important to have that conversation early. Now, let's say you're not an early retiree, you're just a good old work till 65 and then leave the job and retire. Well, some of the same points I just mentioned are still going to apply. Define what retirement means for you, right? What do you want to be doing with your time? Do you want to be staying at home? Do you want to be traveling? Do you have other goals or aspirations? Do you want a second job or another job now that you've retired from your career? Maybe you really like a volunteer opportunity. What does that look like for you? Run the numbers on income and expenses. And if you're capable of doing this, if you want to take charge, that's awesome. You absolutely should do that. But if you maybe want a professional eye to look at it, that's again where we can come in and say, hey, let us help you run those numbers, both with your investments, with your income, whether that's a pension, social security, if you have an annuity that generates income, any source of income that you might have, part time job, and what you're spending. How do those three things come together? Plan for Social Security. So you can begin taking Social Security as early as 62 or as late as 70. And the amount you get every year depends on how long you defer that, how long you wait, more if you wait till 70 or every year after 62. So when do you take Social Security? That's a big question and it can have long term consequences. Let's talk about that. Create strategies to help avoid running out of money in retirement. One of the things I always say is you can talk about something like life insurance. And that's what is that? Well, it's insurance for if I die too soon, quote unquote, right? If I go too early. Well, your investments are kind of like your insurance for if you live too long, quote unquote, right? If you are may live a long time, we have to at least plan for that possibility. We need to make sure we have strategies in place to help you avoid running out of money in your retirement and fight inflation in volatile markets. When you retire, you're no longer putting money into that work retirement plan. What does it mean if we have a period of market volatility where your account drops by a certain percentage? How does that affect your lifestyle? Because if you're using your money, if you're withdrawing regularly, that could have an impact long term just based on timing. So we need to have a conversation about what your goals are. And then we can try to figure out a way to mitigate as much of that volatility or as much as that uncertainty as is possible here. So, how do you age comfortably in retirement? Maybe I hear this question a lot, maybe not quite phrased like that, but it's more about how do I just live successfully in retirement? How do I feel comfortable taking money out and not worrying that, oh boy, am I really setting myself up for failure here? And that's one of the things we deal with every day. Factoring healthcare into your strategy is important. Understanding healthcare and Medicare options are incredibly important. Taking care of your health and understanding personal risks and be smart about your healthcare consumption. We're talking about healthcare a lot, right? Well, that's going to be a bigger and bigger piece of the puzzle. Don't neglect that. And that's something that we focus on every day. How do we manage those expenses as they become a bigger and bigger piece of the puzzle so that you're not worried about, hey, am I in a position where I need to really worry about my money not lasting for as long as I think I might live? We need to get you into a place where you're comfortable with your plan, but also aware of the circumstances that you might face along the way. So, if you have questions about healthcare and retirement, and that's a big topic, but that's where we want you to come to us. We're not going to go in depth on this subject right now, but everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different, and we can really help you find ways to manage the cost of healthcare as you age. So, we can talk about a few individually or one on one. And we also recommend that you talk to your family about your plans for aging and make sure that you have your documents in order. And you know what documents I'm talking about: wills, trusts, medical directives, all that stuff needs to be in place because the future is unknown. And we need to make sure that we're prepared for what's going or what could happen. So, how do we then, if we're in retirement, and you can have this conversation at any time, it doesn't have to be in retirement, but talking about legacy. What do we want your legacy to be? What is your legacy in your own eyes? Would you like to build a family legacy? Would you like to build a philanthropic legacy? Who do you want to benefit from your hard work is a great way to put it. And I it's one of the things that we talk about a lot, but the takeaway I want you to think about is that your legacy should start now while you're still around. It's about much more than money. It's about the values that you hold and the memories you want to pass on to the people you love. So it's incredibly important to build a strategy around how you want your legacy to be fulfilled. Do you want a certain account set aside for kids, grandkids, or friends? Do you want a philanthropic bent on your legacy where you have an account set aside for charities? Do you just want to manage all that in a way that makes the most sense for you? All those things are topics that we need to talk about that are specific to you, because everybody's legacy and everybody's plan for a legacy is a little bit different. We can help you connect with your family to discuss all these topics that I've gone over today. So we help with mentorship for younger generations, doing presentations like this, but maybe geared more towards a younger audience. We have a great packet out about student loans and how to deal with the debt that those can cause, or that they are. We can help you with family meetings. It says mediate right there. And hopefully it's not too big of a mediation. Hopefully it's a happy occasion. But we can sit down with your kids, grandkids, other family members, and talk with them about basically what I'm saying right here. What's your plan on saving? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Here's a strategy for dealing with those student loans. Here's a strategy for saving more when you're in your work retirement plan. All that stuff is so incredibly important. And by working with us, we are more than happy. In fact, we would like to sit down with you and your family to build sort of a family wealth plan and really set the next generations up for success. And objective guidance for specific financial issues, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. So thank you. I've covered a lot, and I haven't gone into a ton of depth on a lot of these topics because we really surveyed a wide range of topics here. And that's where you come in, because your specific situation is not going to fit into a one size fits all box. We need to talk to you about your specific questions and concerns and build a plan that works for you. And that's what we are here for. So please contact us via our contact info in the description of this video. Ask us the questions that you have, and we are more than happy to figure out a way that we can communicate these issues to you in a way that really makes sense for you and your family and sets you up for a solid financial future. So with that, I'm going to conclude today's presentation. Our contact info is here. And for more information and timely updates, please follow us on social media and get on our email list. And you can do that by just sending us an email to the address listed there and say, hey, I'd like to get on your email list. Please sign me up. We hope that you've enjoyed the workshop today. It was a blast to present it to you. And you can also check out our upcoming events on the events tab of our website. So thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next time.